Hello, I'm Bill McDonald from Charlotte County Libraries and History, and welcome to Ode to Local Writers. Our guest is Virginia Crane. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you.
And you're a writer of a particular genre in fiction, I believe?
They don't know where to put me. I write women's fiction, but they always want to put me in romance. Mm-hmm. But I have romance in women's fiction, so.
Okay. And I think you mentioned before we started filming that some of your books or many of your books take place in Charlotte County. Is that?
Yes, I've created two towns. I have the town of Colusa and the town of Pease. Now, why Pease?
Peace River, perhaps?
No, not Peace. But the Peace River was originally the Pease River because of all the wild black-eyed peas that grew along the bank. And it did not become the Peace River until it became a peace boundary after, it was either the Second or Third Seminole War.
Okay.
So I thought it was a neat name.
It is, very. Now, do your books take place in current time?
Yes.
Okay.
They're contemporary.
And if they're based in, or if they take place in Charlotte County, or what you perceive as Charlotte County, is there anything unique about this area for writing these novels as opposed to, let's say, if you were writing in St. Louis, Missouri, or San Francisco, California?
Well, I bring out Florida history in my books because I want people to know that Florida is more than theme parks and beaches. And it's a very, very rich history. And even here in Charlotte County, you know, people think King's Highway is for some king in some part of the world, but it's for Ziba King, a cattle baron. And the conglomeration of history here, Charlotte Harbor was not named for somebody's wife locally. It was named for Queen Charlotte, George III's wife. I think it was George III. At the Revolutionary War, when the peoples came, not everybody went back to England. And a lot came to Florida. They couldn't afford to go back after the Revolutionary War. And so you have that mixture. You have the Seminoles, you have the English, you have the Spanish. I think it's just fascinating.
Cross section. And before we talk about some of your books, just a little bit about your background. How did you get started in writing?
Well, actually, I was listening to a Garth Brooks song.
Oh.
The Beaches of Cheyenne. And I was listening to the lyrics and I started, well, what if he didn't die? What if she didn't commit suicide? Oh, gee whiz. Let's see, I think there's a story here. And that's actually how it happened. I was going home from work. I'm a nurse, a retired nurse now. But I've always been an avid reader. And I thought, I'm going to try writing. And 52 drafts later, I had a book, but it took me 10 years to get it published. You have to be persistent.
Persistent, absolutely.
And I use Crane as my pseudonym because my name is Polish with 5 letters and a Z and a J in it. And nobody can say it. So I chose Crane. My original title for this, which I got to do, was Tears in the Dust, but this particular publishing company I was with didn't like that title.
Oh, okay. So
thought it was too depressing.
Depressing, yeah. Now, did you have any writers that influenced your work, or?
Oh, so many. Well, I love Nora Roberts, and I like to read thrillers, and now I read them for construction. I love James Crepando. I love David Baldacci. And once you start writing, a writer friend had told me, once you start writing, you're never going to read the same, so make sure that you want to do this. And so I like Kate Quinn, I like Lisa Wingate, and I live in a two-story house, so I have my upstairs books and my downstairs books.
Okay.
And you read for construction, you read for rhythm of a story, and I like to think my readers like my stories.
Absolutely.
Some say they make them laugh.
And before you read a selection from, or a passage from one of your books, do you want to say a little bit about each of the books that you have displayed here?
Emeralds on Wednesday it takes place in a small town in Pennsylvania. This is what I call one of my foreign books because it's not in Florida. And it's a woman, a very successful businesswoman, who decides to buy an old house in a very small Pennsylvania town. And then she searches for someone to remodel it. And there's a crazy family, which I based on my in-laws, because you couldn't make that stuff up fast enough. And let's see, then this Hunter's Redemption, not my favorite cover I ever had, and I'm thinking of bringing it out again, starts here in Florida, which I guess you could say was my first Florida book, and then it goes to Ireland, because he had quite a bit of money. I based this on a story years ago, don't know the author, but it was called The Day They Shook the Plum Tree. And it was about a woman who lived as a pauper, and when they went into her house, they found money hidden everywhere, and that's how he got his money. A woman who he would cut her grass and all, made him her heir, as long as he would go to school and make a success out of himself. But then women were after him for his money. Well, he finally met this Irish girl who wouldn't give him the time of day, and he follows her to Ireland.
Right.
Yeah. Now this one is the first book I wrote, and it's about rodeo, a rodeo rider who is a player and had a fight with his wife, who caught him cheating right before he had a severe head injury.
Yeah.
But he doesn't die, and she has to take care of him. And then she meets someone who is his worst enemy. And the
plot thickens.
How in the world am I going to give this a happy ending? But I managed.
Great.
I managed.
And the book you have closest to you, would you like
this
to...
is No Telling. This is about the little town of Pease, because there's no telling what's going to happen in Pease, because there's a lot of characters there. It's a very small town that's growing, and things are changing, and the old timers aren't too thrilled about that. So I have written, I started the 7th or 8th book in this series. So for total, I've written 16 books.
16 books, and you mentioned series. Do you have more than one series?
Just the Pease series and the Calusa series.
Pease series and the Calusa series. And did you want to read an excerpt from one of those, or?
Oh, sure. Do you prefer which one?
Whichever you would like to share with us.
Okay, this one's right here. Okay, No Telling. Why did Therese agree to cook breakfast for her ex-husband? Granted, Les was a terrific guy and easy on the eyes, but the bacon cooking in the frying pan had more sizzle than their marriage. The hearty aroma of bacon and onions filled the air. No use suggesting he leave, the food was almost ready. She scrambled eggs with one hand and undid the twister seal on a loaf of bread with the other. The other snag in this equation was he loved the way she fixed Western eggs and any other meal she whipped up. Though it had been an uphill battle, she had him down to 1 meal a day. She had to find someone to cook breakfast for him, someone who would also take care of lunch and dinner. If he kept showing up on a regular basis, she would send him a bill for filling the propane tank. Holding herself in check, she bit back the sharp retort, aching to roll off her tongue. She shouldn't complain. Les bought all the fixings, but his picking up the tab didn't diminish her aggravation. Do you want 1 or 2 slices of toast? An exasperated sigh escaped her lips, and she mentally crossed her fingers, hoping the answer would be 1. Make it 3. I'm super hungry this morning, sugar. Les Scanlon didn't lift his eyes from the sports section of the newspaper. There he went again with his sugar nonsense. She hated it when he called her that. Was she ever going to break him of the habit? Their divorce was friendly, but he was getting on her nerves. Gritting her teeth, she faced him. How many times do I have to tell you? The name's Therese, not Sugar.
That really draws you into the story and into the characters.
Why is she still taking care of him? But
Good
she's got to
question, yeah.
find him a wife who can cook.
Oh,
So,
now the female and male characters, the hero and the heroines, what traits do they have? Do they share, and what traits are totally unique to their gender, or are they just mirrors of each other?
no, they're not mirrors of each other. And I like to give my hero and heroines everyday careers. For instance, Therese paints houses. That's her business. Les is a police officer, sheriff's department. He's a deputy. They were attracted to each. Well, no, you're going to have to read the book to find out why. But I will say she does find him a wife. But she also gets a crazy neighbor who's an ex-firefighter. And she and Les just kind of fell into that relationship, which is why it was never going to work. Never. And so then the townspeople get involved. Nellie Helen Tillis and Willoughby Tillis, the town historian who owns the grocery store, and how they all support each other. But Nellie Helen is a born matchmaker. If there's an unattached woman and an unattached man, she's going to do her best to get them together. And of course, we have the town gossip.
The town gossip.
Luann Tibbs, she's going to be in everybody's business. And yeah.
Luann Tibbs does sound like the town gossip. That name is perfect for that
Yes.
character. Which is more of a challenge, writing plot or character, or are they equally for you? Or do you find them equally challenging, or one a little bit more?
Well, how I usually start, I have a song that I listen to. And I'll say to myself, oh, there's a story there. But I'll create names, and then I'll get them talking to each other. And that's how my book starts. I will probably write maybe a whole chapter of dialogue. Because if you don't, for me, if I don't get the characters talking to each other, I don't know who they are. And they reveal a lot. And sometimes you try to change them, they'll say, oh no, I'm not going to take that road.
Yeah, right.
That road is not in my plans.
When you're writing, what is the process for you? Do you write so much per day, or do you wait until the muse or the inspiration takes you? Or
Oh, no, no, no. I'm not waiting for the muse and inspiration, because sometimes they can be fickle. I usually write every day. Lately, I take Sundays off and Christmas. But in the beginning, I wrote 7 days a week. I try to do at least 100 words a day. Doesn't sound like much, does it? Some days it can be.
Yeah.
It can be a real challenge, and some days that 100 words will turn into 1,000, 1,500, and but it's the discipline of saying, I'm going to do 100. I am not going to stop, and I have to tell myself sometimes, I may not use this, but there's a seed in there that is eventually going to grow. Because as a rule, I do at least now, I mean, I don't do 50 drafts anymore.
Sure.
I do at least five or six drafts till I say, I think this is ready to send to my friend Lisa, who does my editing and is my right hand and sets them up for to be sold on Amazon and the KDP. But even after that, well, she'll send it back and say, you need to do this, look at this page. You know, she does a whole edit. I send it back. She comes back, well, you missed something here and there, and then there's a final galley. So say if 8 drafts by that time.
wow.
And then the book is ready to go. So people who ask me if I'm doing a book signing someplace and they say, do you ever read your books? I say, you'd be surprised. Absolutely. To the point where I don't want to read them anymore.
I understand. So people hear about drafts. So on the 6th, 7th, 8th draft, what are you getting in your story, your characters, that you're not getting the first, second, or third drafts? So
The later drafts, I'm really building the emotional component. I'm also giving them, I like to think, a personality, mentioning their quirks, and giving them mobility. You know, you just can't have them sitting in a room talking to each other. People don't do that. They have to get up, they have to move around, they have internal thoughts, and that's what I do in the later drafts. That's kind of the blossoming of the story and the character. Because with each draft, the character grows, the character matures to somebody who can be identifiable by a reader. They can say, oh yeah, I've been there. I've been there.
Yeah.
I've experienced that. In fact, I had somebody come buy 3 copies of that one time.
wow.
Because she had read it and she said she had 3 friends who were having difficulties in a relationship similar.
Oh,
And she
so
thought it would help them.
That's a great compliment to your writing.
Well, thank you. And that is probably the most serious book I'm ever going to write.
And that title again is?
Well, actually now the title is Tears in the Dust.
Tears in the Dust, okay.
Because, in fact, I don't want readers ever to pick up one of my books that have a different title and think that it's a different story. I've had that happen to me with authors. And I always wanted that title. And she fought me tooth and nail. Well, it was my first book. You know, I had no chops. I wasn't going to fight.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, about a cover. I was just so glad to have a book between the covers.
Between the covers,
That
absolutely.
I wasn't going to say anything about that. But It was an interesting book to write because it drew on my first career in nursing. So I knew what I was talking
Yeah.
about here.
Didn't have to go
For sure.
far for the background. It
I
was,
didn't
you
have
were
to
the
go-
background.
I
Your
was
career
the
was the
background.
background.
I'd
yes.
been there, I'd done that. So, yes.
Currently, are you between books, or are you working on a novel right now, or have you just
Right now, I am doing the next to the final run through on a story, which is going to be a Calusa story. And it's called That Old Feeling. So
okay.
I'm hoping to have it out by this summer,
Wow. This summer of 2021 or next?
21.
That's ambitious.
Yeah, well, and I kind of dragged my feet on this one because of COVID.
Oh, yeah.
You know,
Certainly.
do I
yeah.
really want to lock myself in a room? No, better go out and trim bushes and work in the yard, and,
Yeah.
you know, get a breath of fresh air. But I have a draft going on a peas story. So,
Terrific. And Virginia, where can readers find your books?
they can find my books on Amazon. And I hope here in the library.
Absolutely.
Yes, so but Amazon, or I always have books with me, and I love going to craft shows and signing books. And I'm at the Cultural Center 2 times a year for their Christmas in July and for the Christmas program in
This has
November.
been Ode to Local Authors, and our guest has been Virginia Crane. We thank you so much for sharing your wonderful books with us, and we wish you continued success.
Well, thank you, and this has been a pleasure.
Thank you.